Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zipursky, and today I'm very excited to have Patrick Farran join us. Patrick, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Michael. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this conversation, Patrick. So for those who aren't familiar with you and your work, you're an executive coach and a management consultant. You're also a mentor to different startups and accelerator programs. You're the CEO and co-founder at your own consulting firm called the Ad Lucem Group. You are a senior associate, I believe, director of graduate business career development at the University of Notre Dame. So you work with MBAs at Notre Dame and so forth, and you're also a coach in our Clarity program. And then in your free time, you perform, community theater. You also train for all kinds of sports stuff. I don't know, is it triathlons?
Triathlons. Yep.
There we
I'm
go.
an amateur triathlete with an emphasis on the word amateur. Yep.
Well, no. I mean, and I remember seeing a photo from one of the plays that you were in recently get circulated at, within the Consulting Success kind of coaches group. And I was shocked. It was just like so professional and it looked amazing. So I was like, wow, I never knew that about Patrick. So it was good to see that. But listen, let's get things started by kind of going back in time a little bit. I believe 2017, you started your consulting firm. What made you decide to start that business? Because you also had a career in the corporate world before that. Kind of take us back to 2017 or a little bit before. What was going on that kind of spurred that transition for you to decide, hey, I'm going to start my consulting business?
Yeah, in fact, it goes back probably about 20 plus years. I've been in corporate consulting for about 20 years, and I had always wanted to have my own practice. In fact, I had started one early on at one of my prior employers. And when I got hired for, a subsequent employer, they said, well, you're going to need to take that shingle down for perceived conflict of interest. So I took it down. The itch never went away. I did some real estate on the side to avoid that. I had my own practice in addition to my day job, but I never lost the desire to have my own consulting practice. And so that stuck with me till about 2017. I'd actually gone back and gotten an executive PhD a number of years ago, and that was done in tandem. I'm a lifelong learner, and I really wanted to, at this stage of my career, shift to having more autonomy in my practice and really focusing on the impact that I could make. So that's sort of the short answer. I'm certainly happy to go into further detail on any of that is helpful.
No, that's awesome. I appreciate that. I mean, so let's again kind of go back to that time. You decide, you know what, I'm going to make this official. I want that autonomy. I want to be in control of my life and lifestyle and serve clients and really make an impact. What's the first thing that you did? How do you actually go out and get your first few clients when you launched back in the day?
Yeah, I start with my existing network. I have built up relationships over the years, and I'm very involved in the nonprofit community in my community as well. And so those are some of my earliest clients because I was in that ecosystem, and so those were natural folks that they had challenges on their plates, and they were challenges that I could help them solve. So really, those organic conversations early on was kind of how I got my first set of clients in my own practice.
And how did you know that they had problems like that, that you could solve? Because this is, I mean, this, right? In working with clients in the Clarity program, especially those that it might be a little bit earlier stage, you have this vast network, right? You have people that you've typically spent quite a while building your experience and expertise, right? In whether it's corporate or nonprofit, but you have a pretty big asset in terms of people that you do know, but it's hard to sometimes figure out how do you actually get in touch with these people. And so how did you go about identifying that there was people inside of your network that you could actually help?
Yeah, in this particular instance, I know that a lot of the nonprofit boards are volunteers. They're often under-resourced and so forth. I had worked on some nonprofit boards, had done some nonprofit work and so forth. And in fact, ironically, my very first client was a referral from my wife who was on a board for a nonprofit. And she was coming home, bringing her problems to the dinner table saying, we've got to solve X, Y, and Z here. I said, Stacy, I could help you guys with that. So that was sort of the natural evolution and oftentimes reaching out to those folks. In fact, one of the things that I did for my very first batch of clients was on Giving Tuesday a number of years ago, I had done a direct mailer to, I had gone out and researched all the local nonprofits through the community foundation, through in our local area here, and I sent out a direct mailer. In fact, I'll get an interesting aside is the fact that nonprofits aren't actually my ideal clients, but I started with them because I had the relationships there, and I have a heart for nonprofits. So in this particular instance, I'd sent out a mailer and say, hey, we're looking to find 5 clients over the next year that we have space for to do some pro bono work where I helped them source grant funding that was available through community foundations and so forth. Sent out this mailer to about 30 targeted organizations that had causes that were near and dear to our heart. I got a really good response rate on that. That resulted in follow-up conversations to identify what were their challenges, were we a good fit for that, how could we help them, how could we identify funding, and then that ultimately helped us to pay for the work that we helped to provide that coming year. And that really gave a lot of good insights into the practice that I took and adopted for our for-profit work. The ironic thing is a lot of folks that sit on these nonprofit boards are my ideal clients, right? They're in leadership positions within their companies. And so that work was what I often call created a virtuous cycle for us. We're doing work that's near and dear to our heart. We're impacting the community in positive ways. We're learning, how to refine our offers and our messaging and so forth. And we're getting out there in front of other folks in the ecosystem who we can serve within their organization. So it was a really powerful sort of early entree into our consulting work.
Yeah, and that's a great example of just kind of getting out there, being clear on who you want to be in touch with, putting out an offer in front of them, and seeing good things come from it. So I'm wondering, you started off as 5, almost 6 years ago with your consulting business, just leveraging your network. When you look at what's working for you today in terms of how you're bringing in clients into Ad Lucem and how you're building a pipeline, what would you say is different today from back then, if at all, in terms of how you approach marketing and what's actually working for you to continue, build that pipeline?
Yeah, I think the one thing that's consistent is certainly the conversations and getting out there and helping folks. I think in both instances is really about seeking to understand first versus trying to sell. I think sometimes, in my early corporate consulting career, we would go out and you felt this, we've got the metrics on our back, the numbers are responsible for, and so forth, and you sometimes you're pushing to sell. And so, just authentically approaching our client prospects and really understanding what they're struggling with. That's common to all the clients that we want to serve, and I think doing that well, that has authenticity for the kind of work that we want to do and the kind of way we want to interact and add value. And so that was consistent in terms of the practice. Some things that have evolved over the years are some of our messaging. Certainly, as I alluded to, for instance, we still have a heart for nonprofits, but our messaging is more around for-profit organizations. We really try to help values-driven leaders transform their whole selves as well as their organization. So some of our core offers are really about doing large scale transformation work and doing that for impact, because these former leaders in companies have an ability to impact these employees' lives, their livelihoods, the mission and the vision of their company, especially now in this VUCA world that we live in. There's this whole mass of challenges that companies are trying to solve and serve their clients, and so forth. And so our goal, not to be trite, but is to try and make the world a better place. And this is the best way that we know how to do that, is through that impact. So our offers have evolved, as have some of our messaging. But I think that core denominator of really seeking to understand where are folks at, what are they struggling with, and then honing in on how we can help them work through those has been consistent throughout.
When you look at kind of like the trajectory, Patrick, of your business and the growth you've experienced over the years, is there anything that stands out for you in terms of, we did this one thing and this happened, or there's just this one experience or one event or one person, or any of these like slingshot moments that somehow really propelled you forward significantly beyond where you may have expected or were? Does anything stand out over those last kind of 5-6 years?
I think there's probably at least two areas that I would say were important in that. And the first one is the folks that we brought onto our team. I founded the company with one of my classmates from my executive PhD program, had a similar core set of values, and we have built out a team that has very significant networks, is very actively involved, shares similar values and so forth. And we all have other portfolios of work that we're involved with in other ecosystems. So there's a lot of synergies that come out in those various ecosystems and with our broader network and our team. So that's one area. Another thing that we did is we entered into a strategic partnership with someone that had a larger audience than we did, and that enabled us to get in front of their audience with some of our offers and our content and so forth. And so that really helped us to grow our database in terms of folks that we can provide nurtured content to, and create additional value and exposure there. So those are probably two top of mind areas.
Well, fantastic. So I'd love to dive into as much of those as we can. So one thing that stood out for me that I wanted to ask you about is for those, who are either considering kind of growing or building or even running their consulting business as part of a partnership, or maybe they're already in a partnership. You've now been doing this for several years. What stands out to you as points that, maybe like the benefits of a partner, as well as, hey, if you have a partner, like these things can happen. Here's what you should be looking at or prepared for. Make sure that you have this kind of agreement in place. What are some high level, but in your mind, like really important points around having a partnership?
So I think the number one is clearly having good values alignment in terms of just values in general. Likability factor is significant. Being explicit around the roles that we anticipate each other playing within the organization, understanding that things will evolve. It's not unlike a marriage, right? You enter into a relationship in that regard, and things change and shift, and so being able to have good conversation, give good feedback, and so forth are really important traits. So that was one really important piece of the equation there. I think the other piece that was important to look at is thinking about the model of the organization, because you can structure this in any number of different ways. And for myself personally, I wanted to structure something where I didn't have to worry at night, especially at this stage of my career, about making payroll, right? And so I found folks that had strong relationships and friendships with, again, were influencers and strong contributors in their own right, and we've formed alliances for some of our additional team members there. So we've got partnerships in an independent contractor kind of relationship for some of the other team members there, though we present ourselves externally to the organization as one united front, but just sort of opening the hood up for folks here, that's certainly one model that has worked well for us, and it's helped us to really have fun with it, because when we've been able to make some decisions, especially going through the pandemic, where we're playing the long game and not have to worry about making these cuts or so forth, but we make these long-term strategic decisions, and that's been really enjoyable and meaningful and significant for us.
Has there been anything that has been concerning or just a challenge to deal with in terms of team members that are not full-time? They are kind of, you create these alliances, or they serve more as their roles more as or structured more as like a contractor, independent contractor. Do you see any downsides to that? And that might make you consider, not necessarily that you would, because as you said, you don't want to have to think about payroll in your situation, right? You kind of want to be very light and nimble, but are there some challenges that come with sticking to that model only?
Certainly. I think, one of the things to be aware of if you entertain a model like that is the fact that there are going to be other competing time demands that you don't have direct influence on. So, and not unlike my corporate career, I was in a very matrix organization where, the consultants I worked with were on multiple projects and so forth. And so I had to navigate across that. So it requires very careful project management and communication and oversight. At the end of the day, flexibility, because you can plan for all those things in the world, and then something happens, whether it's life or another client project, et cetera, and suddenly someone's availability may not be what you originally anticipated. So the contingency planning requirements around that are particularly important in that kind of model. They're important in general, but certainly with that kind of model. I also have other contingency options in terms of talent options, right? If we have the fortunate problem, more work than we can handle, there's things that we can do in terms of delaying starts. There's some additional folks in my network that I could bring on for surge work and so forth. So I've been very explicit about building out what would those contingencies look like, so we kind of know where the trap doors are if we need to pull that. And that's a problem we seek to have and welcome having that challenge. So.
Yeah, and I mean, that's such a great point. I mean, you made a whole bunch here that really resonate with me. I know back to, getting values right in a partnership. That's something that Sam and I talk about very often. And I remember I was walking to the office here the other day, a couple of weeks ago, and I just was listening to a podcast and it made me think like, wow, you can choose to, like, you spend so much time running your business or doing your job or whatever it might be. it's so important. Like, why not choose to do that with people that you actually love and that you really care about? And so I was like, wow, that's like such an amazing thing that we've been able to build. And, you know, over these different businesses that we've run together over the years, the fact that we, you know, you can do it with people that you enjoy being with is so important. And then, you know, you're just talking right now about, yeah, just the way to think about I think the partnerships is really interesting. And I love how you kind of do like the scenario planning, right? This is something that I think more consultants should be doing. Like COVID was a big wake up call for many people. If you were delivering, let's say from stages, like you're speaking, that's how you're generating a lot of your revenue, to wake up one day and go like, I can't do that anymore. If you hadn't taken the time before that to think through, well, what happens if I can't, physically be in the same room? So great kind of wake up call, hopefully, for everybody joining us right now, to just think about what could go wrong in your business, right? With the people that you're relying on, like what are the points that you currently are relying on? And then how can you put a backup plan in place so that if that breaks, right, you've at least, maybe you don't have the answer right away. Like maybe it still takes time to get the right person to the right place or get the right system, but at least like you've thought about it. So you can be a lot more proactive than reactive. So I think that was a fantastic idea. Patrick, you talked about the strategic partnership that also was a bit of a springboard. Can you, I don't know what you can share about it, but just anything that you can share, I'd love to give a little bit more color and context to that. What did that strategic partnership look like? What were the benefits or are the benefits, as others may have not yet necessarily considered this? So it'd be maybe a great opportunity to just kind of introduce what that world of strategic partnerships can be like.
I think in terms of looking at partnerships, it's really, again, the values alignment is an important piece of that. Understanding who are the ideal clients that are in both of those folks' spheres, and do they overlap well? And so making sure those pieces are there. Does the offer alignment, is there co-opetition, right? Is there an opportunity to really mutually benefit one another in such a way that our offer can enhance their offers and vice versa and so forth. So those are important elements that come top of mind. And then from a tactical perspective, similar to the partnership messaging, is thinking about how are we going to work together? What are the core expectations with one another? How are we going to, some of the pragmatic things about how are we going to work out fees and referrals, and all some of those housekeeping things to just be explicit on are really important. But the benefits and the upside of that is, one of the coaches I worked with, they're saying was, business moves at the speed of relationships. And so, borrowing from that mantra, you've got folks that have built, audiences that are going to benefit from your offers. And if you can find those that can really accelerate your exposure and your learning curve and so forth. So why would you try and just do it on your own when those opportunities exist? So that would be, I would add that into the mix of looking for target clients where that makes sense. Looking for target strategic partners can be really powerful as well.
Can we just define for a moment or explore what a strategic partner actually look like? So, I mean, there's obviously a lot of different kind of shapes and sizes they can come in. Any specific ones that you worked with that you feel are really good in terms of like, hey, find a software company that provides software to your ideal clients, or an industry association? Anything kind of come to mind for you of where you've seen success?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right there. I mean, it kind of runs the gamut. It could be a subcontractor for a piece of an offer that you provide. So maybe, some of the clients that I've coached through our program together, they have a core offer, and a client asked for a component that wasn't in their sweet spot, but they could do it and add value and sort of manage that. And so they brought in a subcontractor to deliver that portion of work. So that is one model that can exist. Certainly another strategic partnership can be the getting in front of your audience. So whether it's presenting a webinar with a call to action, for instance, as was the case for some of our models, and finding areas of value that can be positioned within those audiences. Another partnership, of course, is looking for folks where you can collaborate on the work and the delivery, right? Again, it can create for additional bandwidth, can create for additional networking opportunities, and the sum of the parts is often greater than what's the phrase? The whole is greater than the sum of the parts, right?
Yeah. No, I think so. For anyone who's joining us right now, right, if you want to get in front of more people, I think certainly the strategic kind of partnership alliance where you team up with another firm or another person as a way to provide, additional work or increase your capacity, a really great thing to consider. But one that I'd say is even maybe more top of mind for a lot of people is, how do I get in front of more people? How do I generate more business or create more visibility, right? Build a pipeline. And then to what you're talking about right now, Patrick, this is such a tried and true approach, which is finding a platform that already has access to your ideal clients, and typically in numbers, right? So if you're reaching out to an ideal client one-to-one, that's great, and it can certainly work, and it can help you to build a relationship. But imagine if you could reach out to one person, that puts you in front of 100 people or 1,000 people or many thousands of people, which is essentially what you can get from writing an article for a certain type of publication, or as you mentioned, delivering a webinar for a certain type of company. And that might be a software company, might be just another company that serves your ideal clients or has them in their database. But yeah, there's massive opportunity for everybody out there to essentially leverage or use that kind of a model. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, if I could just add, I think one of the things that's important there too is being very clear before you go out there and seek those relationships on who you are, what your value proposition is, how you want to show up to those folks. Because if you're not clear on that and you have ambiguity, going out in front of folks is only going to accelerate that ambiguity, right?
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you do a little bit of that going slow to go fast when you get out there. But to your point, it can really accelerate that process.
What would you say to someone who's kind of listening, going, yeah, that makes sense to me, Patrick, but like, I don't have all the answers. I don't necessarily know how to like improve my message, or I don't know how to make my offer more compelling. What would you say to them? Is there something they should be thinking about, or they should be doing, or is it just about kind of getting out there, taking some action, seeing what works and what doesn't? How would you kind of counsel somebody who's thinking through that right now?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that obviously we have in the program here that we work on that I find particularly helpful is thinking about what are the problems that you can help your clients solve.
Right.
And not only what are the types of problems, but what are the problems you really enjoy solving, right? If you have an affinity towards those and you enjoy those and get energized by those, that's going to tend to serve you better, right? So following your energy and being mindful of that. And then of course, thinking about what are the steps or the actions that you take to addressing those problems. And most importantly, from a messaging side, then what are the results? What are the outcomes that your clients, that you can help them achieve? Because as we often talk about together, clients don't want a report. They don't want a workshop. They don't want a meeting. They don't want a process. They want what's on the other side of that.
Yeah.
So what is it that's on the other side of whatever action or steps that we can take, which we're often really quite good at as consultants, say, hey, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and we'll take you through this process there. But we often fall short in saying, we can help you achieve X. And here's how we're going to take you there. The clients worry about X. So what is that X? And really understanding that is where that becomes a game changer.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're so right. Like we definitely do see that a lot in the Clarity Coaching program, where what tends to hold somebody back, even somebody who may have a lot of experience running consulting businesses and has a team and is successful, is if you're not confident about, let's say, your message or your offer or something new that you're putting out there, you're typically not going to take action. That's just kind of the typical human mindset. But if you can get a few of these things in place, then you have more clarity around it. Now it's much easier to kind of just get out there, right, and start seeing what works and what doesn't work, and that gives you the feedback that you need to adjust and change and make it better. Let's transition into talking. I know kind of a topic that is near and dear to your heart, Patrick, is this idea of really crafting a meaningful consulting practice and consulting business. First of all, what does that mean to you? No pun intended, but right, what does having a meaningful consulting practice mean to you?
So I think that understanding what drives us at a human level, what are our motivations? Why are we doing what we're doing? So often we fall onto the treadmill and we mindlessly pursue a goal where we haven't asked ourselves, why am I really doing this, right? I was just working with one of my coaching clients last week and had a really significant conversation where they shared that they had a revenue goal to achieve 7 figures this year in their practice. And they were very honest about some of their motivations around that. They also had some goals to spend more time with their family, both their children and their aging parents. And they were also feeling frazzled. And they wanted to reduce that frazzled feeling. So they had a set of goals that were they're in competition with one another, right? There is some tension in there, and that's true for many of our goals. Is there going to be? It's about holding those in balance. So understanding, one of the suggestions that came up here is how do you prioritize what is meaningful to you? Because meaning, and I'll try not to geek out too much because I did my research on work meaningfulness, but it's such a complicated, it's a multidimensional concept. There's a lot of things that can contribute to meaning. It's not something that you can ever arrive at. It's not a destination that you achieve and, hey, I've got the work meaning and we're all good to go. I've got my meaningful practice, right? It's a constant equilibrium, like personal health and fitness. You constantly have to work at it. Forces will come and shift there. But what's also significant about work meaningfulness and having a meaningful consulting practice is it's different for each person, and only you can define what that means for you. And that's dynamic as well. Things will evolve and things will change in our life. And so being clear on what it is that drives you, what's your source of inspiration and purpose, and how are you prioritizing the different things that are going to be held in tension can be really powerful in terms of making those day-to-day decisions here when they come into conflict with one another.
Yeah, I think that's such an important kind of inventory or audit for people to do and take themselves. And very often people don't do it, right? You're just so busy working on the business, you're grinding it out, you're delivering on client projects, you're thinking about marketing, you're dealing with your personal, life and everything that's included inside of that. And you don't take time to really think about what is meaningful. How do I prioritize what actually matters out of all the busyness? And I think that's why it is so important not just to think about how can I do more, but how can I really do less of the wrong things and do more of the right things. What have you seen? So in terms, I know you did a lot of research on this. You apply this on a regular basis with your consulting clients as well as the clients you coach in the Clarity program. But how often do you think people should be kind of thinking through this, like in terms of doing an audit or an inventory and paying attention to their priorities and meaningful work?
Certainly when you're starting out your firm, for sure. I mean, that should be part of the fundamental groundwork that you're laying. And then I think at least annually, you should be calibrating on how are we doing in terms of our mission, vision, values, et cetera, and the goals. I think quarterly is probably the optimal cadence to do that calibration checking, because that's then what can translate to your quarterly goals that will help move the needle in your business, so that it takes these concepts of meaning, which can be rather esoteric in their own right, but then saying, okay, how can I translate that into my business? So what does that mean in terms of our quarterly decisions that we're making? How does this align with what is meaningful for us? And just to give a little bit of additional context, some of the things that contribute to meaning are dimensions like creating a sense of unity with others, right? And so that's one dimension. And so that can take the form of how you're interacting with the clients you serve, or the team members that you're on, or the vendors that you interact with, and so forth. Another one is being in service to others. So again, how you show up and what value you add to your clients. What does that look like? Is that one-on-one coaching? Is that large scale, team transformation, et cetera? That's a really significant dynamic. Another component that's an important dimension is your ability to express your full potential. And to the ability that, to the extent that I can be my full self in the work that I'm doing is really significant. And one other variable, and by the way, I'm borrowing from a model from Mario Lips Wiersma and Lanny Morris in terms of some of these dimensions here. This is a well-researched model here that they've formed. The other quadrant that they refer to is having integrity with self. So the extent that my consulting practice or my work aligns with who I really am and who I want to show up to be. If I feel like I have to be a slimy salesman, for instance, and that doesn't jibe with my values and so forth, you're going to feel out of alignment and so forth. Ultimately, those are all held in balance between doing, things for self and others, and being and doing. So each of those quadrants have to align in those areas to have that centered meaning.
Yeah. You mentioned that there is a graphic kind of around this model, and we're going to include that in the show notes. So if you head over to consultingsuccess.com/podcast, or just type in Patrick's name, Patrick Farran, Farran, and Consulting Success into Google, I'm sure the page will come up and you can see that graphic and model there. All right, is there, you talked about this conflict, right? That somebody you were speaking to had recently, right? In terms of they want to get to 7 figures, but they have all these other kind of competing components of their agenda. When you think about the biggest challenge that consultants face, and maybe it's something that you faced back in the day, or you're facing more recently, or something you see, other consultants face, but what stands out to you as maybe a big opportunity, but also can be kind of a pitfall or danger that competes or creates a lot of conflict when you think about the ultimate opportunity to create a meaningful consulting business, and something that really kind of weighs people down? What tends to kind of come to mind for you when I say that?
Yeah, I think one really common theme is sacrificing the long term for the short term easy option. So by
Mm,
that, I think where that tends to manifest itself most commonly in the clients I coach, as well as in my own practice, is sometimes we are afraid to delegate. We struggle to systematize things and so forth. We hold on to things because only I know how to do this, right?
mm,
Or we do lower value activities. Maybe we're procrastinating something that has a little bit more ambiguity associated, or whatever the case may be, but we're not optimizing our time. We're creating a bottleneck for ourselves and the amount of growth that we can do in our business. And we're also adding stress to our plates, right? We've become that single point of failure. We feel like everything is resting on our shoulders. If I'm the primary rainmaker of the company, for example,
mhm.
I know that at any point, if I want to take vacation or my kids get sick or whatever that is, then that funnel is going to shut down if I haven't built systems in place, if I
Right.
haven't brought other people up to speed and so forth. So I think that general theme of really being mindful of, is this the best long-term game plan? Knowing that sometimes in the short term you make decisions that are going to take longer, but if it has a payoff in the long term, being mindful of those investments. And
Yeah.
again, yeah, it's to a process you alluded to earlier in our conversation. Sometimes you're going to make a call in the moment where knowing that it's maybe less than optimal, but if you can do that and be mindful of it and aware of it and ask yourself, what can I do to work on this to improve it for the longer term? That's something that I think we often miss in the day-to-day busyness that we all get tacked into.
Yeah. That's great. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this, Patrick. So, a lot of people want to do more things, right? They have hobbies, or it might be some business activity, it might be personal fitness, relationship, spiritual, whatever it is. But here you are, you teach at Notre Dame, you run your own consulting business, you are a coach in our Clarity program, you are in theater, do triathlons, like you're a family guy, like there's a lot of stuff going on. And I'm wondering what, you must know something that allows you to be able to do all of those things, where a lot of people struggle and they go, yeah, all I have is like, I run my business and I try and keep up and take care of my family, but like, I don't have time for myself to do X or to do Y. How do you think about those things? How do you schedule them, compartmentalize them? Like, what's your secret, or what do you think helps you and enables you to do so many different things at once?
I think one comment that one of my early coaches said to me, Patrick, you do like to do a lot of things, and you can do anything and everything you want, but you can't do them all at the same time.
Right.
And so it's important to prioritize. There are things where there are seasons for things. So for example, I'm in my busy season at Notre Dame and my work there. There's nothing happening in community theater right now. I have a show
Okay.
coming up, and so I kind of know when can I schedule some of those loves. Another decision I make for me, the triathlons have made such a significant impact on my own physical health, but also my mental health,
Mhm.
and it's created greater productivity, clarity of mind, and other benefits there. That's one of the first things I schedule. I have a coach from an accountability and support perspective. I
Mhm.
don't have to worry about the decision fatigue of what my workouts are. She, with feedback from the data and all my workouts and so forth, will schedule my training plan with me and say, here's what we're going to do. I don't have to think about it. I can just
Right.
execute on it. The first thing I calendar for my week are my workouts. And I know that if I don't get those in, I'm going to be worthless to myself and everyone else around me.
Yeah.
I've also learned over the years the importance of protecting my sleep. Um, and so really being mindful that if I have a day, I struggle with insomnia from time to time, I know that if I have a day or two that start to rack up, I've got to reprioritize some things to get back to the basics, because if I'm not well rested, again, I'm not going to be any good to anyone. So it's being mindful of also what are your personal priorities.
Mhm.
Um, and with whether it's your kids, whether it's your activities, whether it's your business, I've made some conscious decisions, and I know this for a fact that I've made some decisions that I'm not as optimal in my business because I have a lot of context switching going on. I'm not as, we could be making a whole lot more revenue if all I did was my company, right?
Mhm.
But that's not what's most important to me. I
Yeah.
get bored really easy. So
Mhm.
I know that I love to have lots of different things going on. I love that intellectual growth and stimulation. There's a lot of synergies there that excites me, but there's also some costs associated with it, cost of doing business, right? When I'm shifting here and got energies there, it means that I'm not going to make the
Yeah.
7 figures in my business, and I'm okay with that, right? I've
Yeah.
made that conscious decision to have that meaningful practice because it supports the lifestyle I want to have.
Yeah, no, I think that's such an important point. Is it doesn't matter, we have clients that we work with who are earning a very healthy 7 figures, others who are, 6 figures, others that are kind of earlier in their journey, but they come from a lot of expertise and experience kind of in their corporate or nonprofit, whatever, background. And there is no one definition for what success is, right? I just love seeing how, like, this is why the topic of creating a meaningful consulting practice, I think, is such a powerful and important one for people to consider, because you could spend a lot of time working hard to build a business to achieve whatever society, it's like you need to make X amount. The more money you have, the better it is. But what if you just don't feel fulfilled, or you feel your energy is being drained, and you wake up, you're not looking forward to doing that work, or right? So I think your approach to it, like, you could very easily make a lot more money than you do right now if you did less of the things that you enjoy doing. But if you ask yourself, what's the real goal of having, let's say, just more money? Well, isn't it to do more of the things that you want to be able to do and to have more freedom? So if you can actually live the life that you want to live right now, still make a great income, and do all these other things, to me, that sounds like a real win. So
yeah, I'm living my dream. I mean, honestly, this is something I've worked for years to have this. For me, what drives me is impact. I've never been monetarily motivated. For me, it's what personal impact can I have in people's lives and the organizational impact. And for me, the biggest win I can get in the day is knowing that I helped change the trajectory of someone's life for the better. And sometimes I get to see that actual outcome, and that's very fulfilling. Many times I know that I'm planting seeds that I may never see, but I'm okay with that, because I get enough of the visual wins to keep me going. And that's what helps me put up with the other ancillary areas that I don't enjoy as much, whether they're administrative meetings with the day job or things like that. So.
Good stuff. Well, Patrick, before we wrap up here for today, I want to do 2 things. One, make sure that people can learn more about you and your work and everything that you have going on, which is a lot. But also, I would like to ask you, over the last 6 months or so, what is one book that you have either read or listened to that, again, could be fiction, nonfiction, but just that you really enjoyed? What comes to mind for you?
Great. I've read several that I enjoy. One that comes to mind that's in line with what I shared about was Dory Clark's The Long Game. A lot of what she talks about resonates with me in terms of I've made some intentional decisions. And one phrase that I love that she shares in there is that absent a clear path, and I'm paraphrasing, but if you don't have a clear sense of direction, optimize for interesting. Yeah. And those words really resonated with me. If you don't really know what you're going to do, if something looks more interesting to you than something else, go for the one that's more interesting. That's going to inherently provide you more meaning and fulfillment, and usually more additional tangible rewards as well, because you do a better job with it, right? Yeah. So that's one that comes to mind. What was the other question again?
No, so yeah, and then any other book as well, or is that?
There was another one that I read, and I forget the author. I apologize, but it's The Gap and the Gain.
So that's was it Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan, I believe.
Yes, the simple concept or premise there, and it certainly resonated with me as an entrepreneur, is we've done that. We're here. We have this vision up here about where we went, and we're often beating ourselves up because all these things that we didn't accomplish to do this, we never got done, and so forth. Instead of taking stock of really what we have achieved and where we came from. It's such a simple but profound paradigm shift there.
I agree. I know they've. Those two have put out a few great books recently, or the last few years anyways. So Who Not How is another one that aligns very well with The Gap and the Gain. So definitely good ones for people to read. Patrick, again, thank you so much for coming on. You are an amazing coach in our Clarity Coaching program, so people can certainly kind of see what you're up to over here. But if they want to learn more about what you have going on in your world at Ad Lucem, in terms of working at the university or anything else, where's the best place for them to go to?
So they can check out our website at adlucemgroup.com or my LinkedIn profile. Feel free, if you do, I'm happy to take LinkedIn requests. If you'll message that you heard me on the podcast here, so that I know you're not just pitching, I'm happy to connect and continue to build a network. And if there's anything I can help, one of my mantras is if there's anything I can help you with personally or professionally, I'm happy to be a resource to you.
Fantastic. We'll have all that linked up in the show notes. Patrick, as always, thanks so much for coming on. Always great spending some time with you.
Likewise, Michael. Thanks so much for the opportunity. Have a great day now.
You too.
Take care. Bye-bye.